I'm Chantal, and I'm a doula, and it's my life's work.
I am Anina McCarthy. I'm 38 years old, and I live here in Brooklyn. And I just gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Ariel Blake. And yeah, I'm just excited to be a mom, and excited for the experience and the journey that I was able to go through, courtesy of tradition and Midwife in the City.
Hi, my name is Ariel Blake. I'm 25 and I am a birth worker doula based in Brooklyn, New York.
All right. Now that we've got the introductions done, let's talk a little bit about what brought us all here. Let's take you back to when you found you were pregnant and all those steps, and whatever you want to share, go ahead and share it.
Sure. So gratefully, our story is pretty straightforward. Thankfully, we didn't have any fertility issues or anything of that nature. So we got pregnant fairly simply. We were tracking my ovulation and decided to give it a go, and we conceived. And it was overwhelming. It was like a whirlwind of things. As I said, I'm 38 years old, so you imagine that you'll need help or assistance. I'm also obese, and so, they just give you the whole gamut of how you're going to need interventions to help you conceive. And so I told my husband, probably it'll take us over a year, maybe, before we get pregnant. So we were both, pleasantly surprised to find out that we got pregnant in the first try. So.
And what was your journey that led you to maybe wanting a non-traditional path of birth in terms of home birth or birth center birth, or just not going to your typical OB?
Sure. So in general, I try to be a very holistic person. My husband as well. He's Jamaican. He's from the islands. Just for years and years, I've always studied what it would be like to have a home birth, because I love that your baby comes into the world surrounded by the people that you choose. I love that you get to do birth your way and not so connected to the medical system dictating how things have to go. For me personally, as I mentioned, like being a woman of a larger size, I knew that I didn't want to be forced to any position, to any standards of being monitored or being assumed that there was going to be some sort of an issue with myself or birthing my own baby, being told that I would need to have a C-section, being told that I wouldn't be able to do what I knew I could do, what I knew I was born and created to do.
Did any of those decisions change because of the pandemic and the coronavirus? We are in New York City. We're talking 2021 with all the stuff that's going on.
Absolutely. So my niece was born at the height of COVID in August of 2020. We weren't even sure my brother was going to be allowed in the hospital with her mom to give blood when she gave birth. And that thought, the rules changed from day to day, right? So one day you were allowed to have a partner, the next day you weren't, depending on the numbers. And that wasn't something for my first birth, my husband's first child, that I was willing to even take a chance of, going to an OB and going through hospital setting and then realizing, the numbers are too high, your husband can't be here. Or the horror stories that I've heard of husbands that were allowed to be there for a matter of mere hours and then forced out of the hospital room. So that wasn't something that we wanted as our first experience of bringing a child into the world at all.
Yeah.
And then just knowing that COVID is in the hospital, because that's where the sick people go.
Yep.
And so there's still COVID in my home.
So how did you find your birth team? Who did you choose to be there? How did you figure that whole?
So even before we got pregnant, because I'm the kind of person who plans and thinks ahead, I had searched for midwives that would service the area where we live in Brooklyn. It was very hard to find. It was important to me as an African American woman to have persons in our team of providers that reflected what we looked like, what our daughter was going to look like, that understood the struggle, that understood what it means to not be heard by somebody who's supposed to be your medical professional. It was so important to me that we would have someone who really truly understood as our provider. So I was searching specifically for African American or persons of color who were midwives and who also serviced Brooklyn. And that was a very hard journey. There were some people, that I came across, and then there were some people that it just didn't quite fit right. It just didn't quite sit right with me. In terms of maybe giving birth in a birthing center, well, I kind of age out of the birthing center, as well as my weight. They don't take obese people in the birth center. You're over the weight class for them. So that was jarring in my search to find out that there's reputable birthing centers, but sorry, you weigh too much. So you have to figure out how to give birth to your baby in a loving environment some other way. And that was our experience. And so gratefully I came across Tanisha.
And how do you find your two doulas that are there sitting next to you?
Oh my goodness! Thanks to my wonderful midwife. She had done some work with my lovely doula here and my other lovely doula here. And yeah, she recommended. I mean, we spoke at length about comfort measures for home birth, at length about support team, and being surrounded with persons that would be able to support me during my postpartum as well as antenatal care.
So maybe you guys could talk a little bit about how you toter these things. How did these visits? How does that work?
Yeah, well, what I've been discovering in my volunteering is that I really want to base everything that happens off of the needs and the wants of the birthing person that I'm working with. And so our initial conversation was just sort of, who are we? Getting to know each other, which was really lovely. Realized that the energy felt good.
Wholeheartedly.
It felt like a good fit.
Yeah.
And then tailoring our sessions to make sure that both Anina and Tafari felt prepared physically. So what are the things that we need in our space? How do we want to set up our space? And then the more mental and emotional deep diving, which Anina had done and Tafari had done so much beautiful work together already, and the research that she had put into the choices that she was making, and ultimately what comfort measures we thought would work well, and then just completely taking her lead, really. And that's what's been the beautiful journey, is trusting in and helping the birthing person trust that they have the answers and that they have everything that they need within themselves and their relationship with their baby to birth the way that they are designed to.
And how did you bring
it was wonderful to meet Anina through Ariel, as I was supporting her and Anina. So what I chose to do with her is constantly re-empower her, because she was already empowered. So meeting her, I found that it was easy for me to just reinforce what she already knew. So I was confirmation for her, I felt. So she's done so much work that it was easy to do that.
It's often unusual for a person to have one doula, but even two. So how did that work for the birth? How did that work for the birth story? Why don't you guys get into that?
Yeah, well, I think just so how we met, Chantal and I met online doing a Mama Glow. I think maybe my
Oh yeah. We got it.
Symbol on it, and that's where we took class together virtually online through the pandemic, and got our foundation and our basics of the information to bring to these sessions.
Good.
A lot of amazing information, and we just connected in one of the Zoom sort of chat rooms.
Yes.
I had a discussion, and I was like, I've got to meet her and learn more about her. And so we've been teaming up on some other births together, and this was a situation where Anina was like, I'd love some more backup, more hands the better, right? There's people in the space to provide support, and so that's how we merged together.
Yeah, it was wonderful working as a team together. I found that a lot of the support that Ariel was giving her, every now and then, all I did was reinforce that support, because sometimes you need confirmation in what it is that you're doing, and so we worked well together to make that happen for you.
Yeah, grabbing other supplies, like, oh, hey, we got to get some water out of this tub.
Well, before we get there, let's talk about the night the labor kind of started. Maybe you can get into that.
Sure. So, as they both said, my husband and myself had done a lot of work prior, a lot of mental work and prep for the baby. We chose to do hypnobirthing, and it was a lot of affirmations and meditations, and really embracing my power as a birthing person. It was a lot of releasing my own fears about birth in general, because most people, for a first birth, your experience is the horror stories that you've heard from other moms, or, you know, the crazy things you see on TV, you know, the screaming, the yelling, the horror of it all, but wanting to know and searching for the information about the not horror, you know, like searching attentively to hear stories of women who gave birth in peace and happiness and joy and love in warm environments. And that was important to me because my mom passed away when I was 17, so I didn't have that level of support through this whole pregnancy and birth. So choosing the proper doulas for me and the proper midwife and even my birth photographer, that mothering energy being in the room was very vital to me. And I received that from all of my team, and it was what I needed, as she said, that extra reinforcement and push to say, like, you've got this. You did the work. You've released your fears. You've done the breathing. You've learned, you know, all of the things, and now just allowing yourself to do it, you know?
So let's talk a little bit more about your early labor. I remember you had contractions on and off. You managed to watch your niece a little bit. You got some ice cream. Let's hear all about that.
Sure.
A couple of nights.
Yeah, so it was my intention. I definitely set my intentions for this birth and what I wanted it to be. I'm one of those people. I'm sort of type A in that way, that, you know, you leave room to give and to flex and flow, but also have an idea of the way you want things to go. So then you know, and you can direct other people to be able to assist you and support you in those things. So, I'm a person that transitions can sometimes be hard for me. Sometimes I have bouts with anxiety and things of that nature, so structure helps me a lot. So for me, it was important to know what I wanted and how I wanted things to flow in that day. I knew for me, I didn't want to be one of those women that have a 3-hour labor where it just happens so fast and you don't know what's going on. I needed the slow transition. So that was what my intention was. I really wanted to slowly transition, and that's how it happened for me. So my daughter was born on a Thursday morning, and my labor started on Tuesday evening. So Tuesday evening, around maybe 10 o'clock at night, I started feeling very low belly, similar to period cramp feeling. Nothing intense, nothing, you know, that I've never felt before. Totally fine. And, you know, eventually I was like, oh, these keep happening. Maybe I should, like, time this, you know? And I called my girlfriend and I was like, hey, I think something's happening. Nothing serious, but I think something's happening, you know? And she's like, all right, well, let's time. And during that conversation, maybe it was a 45-minute conversation, 3 episodes of that happening. So they're 15 minutes apart. Okay. Went to the bathroom and I peed, and then there was a little bit of tinge of some sort of, you know, blood. And I'm like, okay, maybe these are beginning signs of things happening. So I made sure to contact Ariel, and then I messaged you, I believe. Like, all right, something's moving, something's happening, you know? And that was Tuesday night, like 10 o'clock. I was able to just kind of gently labor that night. I labored on the birth ball. I did my figure eights and all the things. I used, of course, my essential oils, which for me were very integral in my whole, like, birthing. The essential oils for me, I had used them through the whole pregnancy when I did all my meditations. So it was very familiar for me as a soothing, calming thing. So me and my ylang on the ball.
So it was already familiar space since you had been using those before.
I've been using them all along. So it was just like a trigger to my mind to relax, you know, because I'd already been doing it.
As well, massage.
That's right. The essential oils and the massage. And so it was very familiar to my brain to be like, okay, this is what we smell when we're relaxing, you know? So it helped me to relax. And just also knowing the parts of labor was so integral for me. Like, I knew in the beginning stages that there would be a mucus plug, that there would be some blood, that there would be some, you know, contracting of my uterus. And so it wasn't taking me by surprise when it happened. I didn't feel nervous. I felt, okay, great, this is starting. I'm happy. This is a good thing, as opposed to the panic of not knowing what my body's doing and what my baby's doing. And that's in part thanks to Ariel and to Chantal and to Trinisha preparing me in my visits. Okay, this is what labor looks like. This is what you might feel. This is what you might experience. So it didn't feel brand new to me. And so then it progressed that night. I had contraction maybe for 2.5 hours every maybe 8 minutes or 10 minutes. And I just stayed on the ball. And then, you know, I said to myself, I don't want to be one of those moms who goes into labor and hasn't slept for 48 hours and you're so tired and so exhausted I want to make sure that my wits are about me. I'm going to try and lie down. And so I slept for a few hours. My husband got home from work that morning. It was probably almost 2 a.m. And the contractions kicked up a little bit. And so, I got up again out the bed and I walked the house with him, and we started just slowly preparing, this baby's going to start to come soon. So, made sure that the pool was completely inflated, made sure that, we had the proper hose, make sure that things were sort of, moving in the right direction for our space also being ready for baby to come. And so that was Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. And then Wednesday morning, I babysat my niece. So, her grandma was planning to come down from upstate to keep her so that I could, be on, free, I should say, to give birth to my own child. But, it's upstate and there's traffic and there's this and there's that. And so we just work with it, and she came and we slept that day a lot together. Thank God. She was very amenable to just resting in bed with Auntie. And we took naps and we had a great day. And then Grandma came at around 3. And sure enough, my body that whole day while she was here, it just gave me space to care for her. So contractions were still coming, but maybe 45 minutes apart, maybe 30 minutes apart. And I was like, okay, they're not going away, but they're just giving me space to do the things I need to do. And then when she left around 3:30, right again, 8 minutes apart, they started right back up again. So I'm like, all right, we know what's happening. We should probably go for a walk. Desperately, I wanted to get to IKEA that day. But then I was like, maybe I don't want my water to break in IKEA. So maybe stay a little closer to home. Mm-hmm. So we just did things around the house, my husband and I. We spent time together. He helped me to meditate, to breathe, and just to kind of just be present in what was happening. And still checking in with Trinisha and the doulas throughout the day, just letting everybody know, hey, still moving in some direction, just not very speedily. Mm-hmm. And then, some of the kids I used to babysit, their mom reached out and they were like, hey, we want to go get some ice cream. And I'm like, sure, I'm in labor, but let's go get ice cream. And so they came. I just knew, being around people that I loved, and the oxytocin would just keep flowing, right? It would just keep helping me to progress in the direction that I wanted to go. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. We took a short walk. I made sure to put on a diaper. We did not want the water breaking in this street. And we went for a nice family walk. We went to get ice cream in the neighborhood. Meanwhile I'm typing my contractions while we're sitting there outside eating ice cream, 8 minutes apart, 6 minutes apart. Totally fine. We came home. It was about 8 o'clock. I said to my husband, I think tonight's going to be the night. So might want to grab some groceries. We ordered a pizza. We just kind of hung out. I'm still having, regular-ish contractions. And then, I just took some time, went in the room, got on the ball again, just kind of centered myself a little bit more. Again, diffusing the essential oils, listening to birth affirmations, and just, accepting that we're moving to another stage, we're getting there, slowly. And that was big for me, being able to be present mentally and just accept, okay, this is now what we're moving towards. So then probably around 10 o'clock, they started ramping up, getting a little bit more intense. And I'm like, okay, still able to breathe through them, still able to just, calmly accept what's happening. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to try to get a couple hours sleep because I feel like this baby's going to come tonight. And this is, now Wednesday evening, about 10 o'clock. And I for sure, she in utero was always wide awake at the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock hour. And so in my heart, I felt like that's when she was going to start making her appearance around that 2, 3 o'clock hour. So I was like, you know what, let me try to grab a couple hours of sleep. And so I lied down for a while. Meanwhile, my husband, in his lovely way, is stringing lights in the birth space and diffusing, lavender in the birth space and, putting up curtains and all that, because I knew I needed the room to continue to be dark. And if we went till morning, when the light came up, I wanted a way to kind of keep the space kind of dark and quiet. Anyhow,
So when do you think they started to get stronger? When did you call in?
Oh, so okay. At midnight, I was woken up by a very intense contraction. Okay. And I had been lying on my back at the time. Okay. So I was like, okay, wow, that felt like something. Okay. And I let that one pass, and then 4 minutes later, the next one hit, and I had still been lying on my back. And I was like, okay, there's no way I can do these on my back. I have to get up. So I got up, and I got on the ball. And so they started coming pretty strong. And so that was from midnight till about 1:45-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, okay, let me see if I can lie down again. And I laid down. And I remember it like just yesterday. I lied down and I had another contraction. And that contraction, I felt the baby's head engage in my pelvis. Like, I had never felt it like that before.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, we're transitioning to something else now. And in that very same moment, it was like, I don't know if you've ever felt like you were going to pass out or gotten lightheaded where you kind of feel warm all over your body. It was like warm tingles everywhere, and immediately I felt nauseous. And I said, oh, this is transition. I know, I'd read that sometimes women throw up when they're in transition. And immediately, all the pizza. Right? And so I'm on my way to the bathroom and texting Ariel, 2 a.m., right? And I'm like, okay, I'm texting her pictures of the contractions that I had been timing.
Several things that you sent to me.
Yes.
Yeah.
I screenshotted all the contractions. I'm like, here you go. This is where we're at now. We're like maybe 6 minutes apart or something like that. I'm like, I'm throwing up. The baby's head is engaging in my pelvis. I know I'm in transition because I had done all the research. So I knew what that would feel like. I didn't need vaginal checks for that. You know, I didn't need to have someone rooting around inside me to know like my body is shifting to another place now.
And it was when she notified me that she'd thrown up that we were like, okay.
Yep, something's going on here.
I'm gonna head over, and I think I must have made it over here around 2:30 or so. Yeah,
even before, I think.
Maybe 1:45-ish, 2 a.m.
Yes.
I was here.
Yeah, she was like immediate. Like she was like, so okay, I'm gonna get my stuff then. And I was like, that's great. I'm gonna call Shanisha.
And when did you arrive?
So Ariel calls me around 3 a.m.
Yep.
Yeah.
Around 3 a.m.
Yep.
And it just so happened that that's my hour of meditation.
Oh.
So I was already up, and I had said to myself, could be today. Throughout my meditation, and when Ariel called me, she said, you sound wide awake. She said, it's that call. I said, okay, I'm on my way. And I just calmly got myself together and came
yeah, you
over.
were here pretty quickly too.
Yes, because I felt that it would have been happening in that day.
Yeah. And we had all said, we'd all said that it was going to definitely be middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. We said that because I was constantly asking her, so what time do you feel the baby active? I said, oh, we're going to have in middle of the night.
Yeah,
baby.
early morning. Yep. I figured that labor. And I know, when you're left to your own devices, in that quiet and the still of the night is when things happen, So I was pretty anticipating that. And for sure, I mean, as soon as I called Ariel, she was like, okay, I'm getting in an Uber, I'll be there. Like, her ETA was like 12 minutes or something. I was like, you just breathe a sigh of relief, like help is on the way. And we had discussed, that we wanted to kind of do like a trickle effect of when people would come, so that it didn't feel like everyone rushed in all at once, and it would have been very jarring for me in my experience for sure. And even then, at the same time, I called Shanisha and she's like, do you want me to come now? And I'm like, let's wait. Let's let Ariel get here. Let's see what comfort measures and how I progress. And then, after Chantal gets here and see how things progress, and then, we'll call you when we're sure that it's a go today.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the comfort measures I saw and some of the video photography that you had done in terms of the back and stuff. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
We did a lot of counter pressure, which was, again, completely led by Anina. She knew where she felt she needed that pressure applied, so either Tafari or myself or Chantal was applying that counter pressure.
Okay, good.
We used the rebozo a little bit to do a little shake and shimmy on the hips.
Yes.
Okay.
You found a really great position over the bed,
Yes.
leaning over, so a bit of all fours, but supported by the mattress that worked really well for you. And then it just was about okay, we've been here for about 30 minutes, let's maybe try a different position.
Yes.
And making sure that we were helping to move things along, but then also giving you some rest when you needed.
Yeah.
There was probably maybe an hour in there where you and Tafari had some lovely comfort time together in the bed, and he really supported you through that.
Absolutely.
While you rested a bit.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. It was lovely to watch her and Safari even work that out. The way that she directed her husband to apply pressure in a certain place, it was just so lovely. I really want to compliment you on that, because it was so lovely. It was okay, honey. I'm feeling the pain here, pressure right here, please. It was very comforting and assuring her knowing exactly what she needed at the time. And that's a contribution to the work that she's done. You know, the work that she's done with Ariel, the work that she's done with herself, and allowing more people to support that work. Allowing me to support that work is what made this, I feel like, a really successful, loving birth.
Yeah, for sure.
And Tafari's instincts and all of that work that you two had done together just shone so brightly in terms of his instinct in those moments and when to come in, when to lean out a little bit.
Yes. We had done a lot of work with that together, like prepping for birth. We did a hypnobirthing course, and there was a lot of information for the birthing partner. So it was helpful for him to they even provided him a script, like things that he could say, things that would be helpful to the birthing person, and we kind of went through it and decided I'd love for you to say this, I'd love for you to say that, that would be supportive of you to say or do.
So different affirmations. Yes. I recall after the birth, you had read the affirmation to me that you had written for your birth. Was it something similar to that?
Yes. So it was things like reminding the birthing person your body was created to do this. Reminding the birthing person you have all the things that you need. You have all the tools that you need to bring forth your baby. And those were things that he would say to me. I mean, even before Labor Day, we'd just be kind of walking through the house, and I'd be like, are you sure do you feel like we're making the right choice with the home birth? Do you feel like this is the right choice? And he'd be like, you're built to do this. You can do this. So those affirmations in him just reaffirming me constantly was really big. And just, as she said, being him knowing, at what comfort measures are even, you know what I mean? Yeah. Participating in the prenatal visits with Ariel and with Trinisha and with Chantal, and just having those conversations about what types of things might be helpful during the birth. So he didn't feel all thumbs, not knowing what to do. He understood about the counter pressure. He understood about what we would call shaking the apples with the rebozo. He understood, the things that might be useful to me. Oh, and also we used the TENS machine.
TENS, that was a great help.
Right?
Yeah. To your lower back.
Yeah, that was a really big part of the comfort measures for me.
How did we know the baby was ready? Do you want to talk about what you witnessed and what you experienced? And
Well, the one thing that was just so remarkable to me about the whole thing is how lucid Anina was the entire time, so aware of her sensations, and again, that work that she did of understanding what's going on with her body at every given point. I mean, contractions never were less than 4 minutes by the time that Trinisha even walked through the door, and I was able to... You had felt a big surge, I would say, a couple of big surges where you felt the head really come down.
I felt her pushing her way through.
And so you were over the bed on all fours, and I said, okay, let me just check. Let me see what's going on. And so I went down there, and lo and behold, just the tiniest little sliver where I could see the baby girl's head. And so I was like, okay, we're really close.
Yeah.
That was when you were maybe 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
And it was a situation where I was like, okay, well, I think we could get into the pool. But I was like, I knew as soon as she got into that pool,
that baby was
just going to slide right out. So I said, let's just get Trinisha a couple more minutes.
I knew I needed to be in the pool. Yeah. I knew I needed to be in the pool.
She was like, well... if I'm not gonna go in the pool, can we get some lubrication?
Yes.
And we're like, well, you're actually okay.
Yeah. But in hindsight, that was a really good moment where now I would say let's get you some oil right away.
Yeah.
Get that feeling now.
Yeah. So it definitely was definitely one of those things, and I can understand from their perspective, right? Because when you deal with different people and maybe they're like, oh, baby's coming, and it's not.
Yes,
baby's definitely not coming. Right,
nowhere near.
Right.
Well, for myself, I was looking at everything as well, just like Ariel was looking, and when you requested, maybe I'm gonna need lubrication, I was like, there's so much lubrication.
There was at that point
right now.
Yeah, my bloody show.
Most of your bloody show.
Like, there's
had
so much
at
lubrication, and we were like,
but I can. But in hindsight, it would have been great for us to just apply a little bit of oil. But sure enough, that was
minutes.
Tafari was just making sure that the water.
Yes.
Chantal and Tafari were making sure the water was just right and that the pool was full. And lo and behold, Trinisha came up the stairs. Chantal went to go open the door for her, and we
So it was very close. Yeah, it was very close to that moment. But I remember that moment vividly because I could feel like up to this point I had a diaper on the whole time. So I was like, okay, we're good to go. And then it was just after I had taken that time to rest a little, and Ariel and her doula way, like, okay, we gotta get walking. Let's go. We're gonna walk. And I was like, in my mind, I just kept hearing, like, in the training that I had done, like, stay upright, stay forward leaning, keep your pelvis open, And so we shimmied and we swayed at the foot of the bed. Remember, there was a lot of just open pelvis.
Very incremental movement from, like, you being over to just slightly different. Yeah.
And anytime I would make any kind of change, I could feel, anytime I would make space in my pelvis, I could feel the baby coming and it felt like she was coming, like, fast. And so I was like, nope, we can't walk to the bathroom. And we'd take 2 steps and I'd be like, nope. And I'd just throw myself, like, forward leaning over the bed, because I was like, no, this baby is going to come so fast, and I could just feel it. And when she started to crown, like, my feet had gotten so tired from standing that I was like, I'm just going to go on all fours again on the bed. And I lifted my leg to, like, go on all fours, and that space in the pelvis that was created.
And then you went
Yes, right?
You said, okay.
Right?
Go back over here.
Just that little space when I lifted my leg to get up onto the bed, it made space in my pelvis, and the baby started coming, and I was like, oh, she's coming, and I felt that pop, and I was like, I felt like my waters, had started to break. So, and that's when, Chantal and Ariel were like, but, we don't really see that much water. I'm like, I felt the pop. Like, I felt the pop. And I mean, I had it in a diaper, so. But in honesty, I was like, no, I felt the baby crowning. And that's why I felt like I needed the lubrication. Like, it just felt like as her head started to come down the canal, like, okay, I need to be in the water, or we need to think about a plan B really quickly, because one way or another, something's happening here.
So when you stepped in the water, how did it feel? How did that?
So we get to the birthing space to get into the water. I remember, like, a huge contraction hitting me then, because I remember leaning over the tub, right? I leaned over the tub and I was like, okay, it's happening, And I can remember just before that I texted, like, my friends, and I was like, the baby's coming. Right? 2 minutes. And so we're just everyone's trying to figure out how to get me into the tub. Okay, step over into the water. And I'm like, no way. If I lift my leg to step into this tub, this baby's going to shoot right up. So Chantal went to get the step stool for me, I believe. Yeah. And so I was like, at least if I step down into the water, it won't be such a big hip, movement happening. So we stepped down into the water. They helped lower me into the water. And it just felt like a hug. Like, it felt like a warm hug, like, I felt all the muscles in my body just kind of relax, and it didn't feel intense or, like, nerve-wracking or any of that kind of thing. It felt very comforting.
I think it's so important, like, when the birthing person had made a decision and has had a mindset on how they've made an intent mindset on how they want to deliver their baby. Yeah. It's that position exactly going to allow the baby to come in a comfortable way. So I think the misalignment comes when the birthing person is not secure and understanding exactly how they would like to deliver. For sure. But that's where doulas also affirm that for them.
100%. I can remember even before I got into the pool, I remember we were walking and it did feel very intense. And I remember Ariel, telling me kind of just lean into the feeling, lean into that. And I remember saying to her, like, I don't want to become overwhelmed. And she said, okay. She said, so when the next one comes, we'll use the word surrender. We'll remember to just surrender to the feeling. And I was like, that's a great trigger word for me. And that had been my trigger word through all the meditations I had done. So when that next big contraction came, she was like, breathe, and she was just that reminder, like, surrender, just surrender. And I was able to just release. And I think it's your instinct to fight against it that makes it harder, that makes it painful. Like, I would not say that I experienced any pain at all in my daughter's birth. It was intense. There were a lot of sensations, but there wasn't any pain because, like she said, I wasn't afraid of what was happening. I had made the intention in my mind, this is what we're going to do, and so it all felt good to me. It all felt familiar to me. and the support of the doulas, the support of my husband, and knowing, you know, that I have a midwife who is like, yeah, whatever you need to do to get this baby here, it's okay. It's all okay. It's not this textbook way that it has to happen, you know. It's whatever is right for you. And yeah, I remember getting to the water, and I remember getting into the pool. I remember just before we stopped to try to check for baby's vitals. And, you know, I remember just the reassuring way that you were speaking to me, Trinisha. You know, like, okay, at that moment we couldn't hear the baby's heartbeat, you know. And you said to me, oh, I think it's just because of the position that we're in right now. But baby's fine. I'm sure baby's fine. And those kind of things that just kind of reassure you in that moment. I mean, I wasn't worried because the baby was birthing herself. She was pushing her way out. I hadn't pushed at all, and she was coming, you know. So I knew she was actively doing it. I knew she was okay. But just hearing that from your provider, from your medical provider, like, your baby's okay, you know. And then sure enough, we got into the pool, and then, oh my gosh, everything just, my whole body. And I remember Trinisha saying to me, like, are you sure that's the position you want to be in? And I'm like, yep. Kind of like in a weird, like, side-lying position. I actually remember my whole body just feeling so relaxed. And then I remember you trying again for baby's vitals, and then sure enough, clear as day, we heard a very strong heartbeat beating, you know? And I was just like, yeah. And it was just, again, another reassurance, like, everything's fine and everything's going the way it's meant to go. And from there, it was very quick. As Ariel said, the doulas were all, you know, removing water from the tub. So the tub had been filled by my husband, and the water had been very hot. I remember early while I was laboring, I remember Ariel saying, oh, it's a little bit too hot, so we needed to add cooled water to the tub. So then it went a little bit above, you know, where it should have been filled. And then, of course, you put a 370-pound person into the water, and the water level rises again. So the doula, I just have this mental picture still of that day, that everyone just working. It felt very community, right? It felt very community, like grabbing pots and pans and buckets and scooping all the water out. Just
she had all the baby's clothes folded in a nice bucket. Like, I was like, oh, let me take you out
and use this bucket.
And she remembered everything that she had set up. She was like, there's blankets. I was like, it's not in that anymore. I know where they're at now. Because she was very organized and prepared for her baby. She knew her script very well. Yeah. That's the best way I can put that.
Yeah, for sure. I did. I had like one of those sterilite buckets and like baby hats and enough towels and enough receiving blankets and all those things. So yeah, I was like, it's not in the bucket because the bucket's been used to remove the water. Which I'm grateful.
But I know where they're at. Don't worry. We got this.
So true. I mean, and I was just grateful that, you know, everyone just worked together, you know, and it just felt, like I said, very, very community, you know, like, okay, we're all, you know, assembly line style, taking water out the pool so that, you know, there's not too much water for the baby when the baby's born.
So when was that moment that you could feel her arriving and her coming to your arms?
So we got the water level situated, and I can just remember because my husband was a part of the assembly line, and I remember you just asking me like if I was comfortable, and then I remember you said to me like that I should open my legs, and I was like, nope. And why? Because all the reading that I had done, right? That like when your legs are closed, that your pelvis is more open. And so I was like, no, and it just felt really good to like keep my legs closed for some reason. And I was like, if that's what my body's saying, I want to just flow with that. And Trinisha right away was like, okay, if that's what feels good to you, then we'll flow with it, you know. And I love that, you know, because I know for sure if I was in a hospital laying on my back in that bed, you know, there's no flow with it. You know, it's like, this is what needs to be done, you know, and this is the routine, right? And birth is not routine, it's individual. So I needed that, you know, and for sure, I mean, I felt that next contraction, that next wave coming, and I just remember saying like, I need my husband, you know, and he walked in the room, and he walks behind me, and he has his hands on my shoulders, and then literally, like, she pushed herself out. I did not push. I mean, and that's something that I wanted. Like, I read so much about the fetal ejection response, and that literally, if you let your body push when it's ready, your baby your fundus, all those contractions will do what they're meant to do, and they'll propel your baby out. And I was like, all right.
And they literally propelled her out.
I mean, honestly, she swam out, and my friends laughed because I told them the whole time. I would be like, nope, I'm not gonna push. This baby's gonna walk right out of my uterus, And they'd be like, yeah, okay. And I remember the little boy that I used to babysit. He'd ask me like, well, how's the baby gonna come out? And I was like, she's gonna swim. She's gonna swim right out. And sure enough, that's exactly what she did,
And what's amazing was that it was a few, maybe 25 to 30 minutes later, she was just there enjoying baby and everything that happened. And she said, "Oh, the placenta's coming now." Yeah, and she says, "Okay, here it is."
The basin already.
Yeah,
ready to go to
it was just honestly, when you're nothing surprises you, and I think that was the biggest help for me, like knowing in advance of all the things that were going to happen. I mean, I have a friend that said she gave birth and she had no idea she had to birth the placenta, and I was like, well, your team failed you, because there's no reason that you should go through 10, 12, 9, 10 months of OB appointments and all the visits and all the pricks and all the blah blah blah, and then you literally give birth to your baby and you have no clue that you have to birth the placenta. Then they failed you. That kind of a shock to your system, right? Like, okay, you have your baby, and then now all of a sudden they're like, you have to push again. You're like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. Because they failed you in helping you to prepare, and then.
Can I also say it may not be necessarily that the birth team failed that particular individual. It could be that individual is not ready to receive that information.
That's another point.
You have to spoon feed each one individually. So if the person is just mentally not ready to receive the information that you are delivering on a regular basis, it falls on deaf ears. It falls on deaf ears. So I find that the challenge of a doula is to try to wake that ear up.
Mm-hmm. And curiosity.
You have to wake that ear up. And I find that that's where our work comes into play. Mm-hmm. So it's lovely to have been in the presence of someone who really did the work, right? It's lovely, but I just wanted to make that point that everyone is not always ready to receive that information.
You do. I mean, I'm a person that if I'm gonna do something, I want to know all the parts of it. I mean, I'm never the person that feels like somebody else will figure it out for me and tell me what to do. Right? Like, that doesn't work for me. And like you said, there are some people we've been trained our whole lives to feel like the doctors know. Mm-hmm. So why should I have to, you know what I mean? Whatever the doctor says is fine, regardless of if my body doesn't agree with that, regardless of if it doesn't feel right, regardless of if it's making me sick, but the doctor gave me this or the doctor said to do this, And I guess it may be just part of how I was brought up. My dad was always like, have a plan A, have a plan B, have a plan C. Research, figure out if this is true, figure out if that's right. Like, don't just accept anything at face value. Like, always do your research, So finding out I was pregnant was like a whole huge, experience for me to like research all of it. I mean, I found, week by week guides, and not just like your baby's the size of a tomato, but like, this is what's happening in your body this week. Your baby's eyes are developing, your baby's nose is developing, your baby can hear, your baby can blah, blah, blah. So then I knew things to do. Like, if I was pregnant during the pregnancy and I felt like she wasn't moving enough, I knew, well, she can hear. So I'm going to put music on and see if she responds to the music. And sure enough, she starts kicking away. Or I'm going to use a flashlight on my belly because I know by 18 weeks or whatever, she's responsive to light. And sure enough, then she starts moving away from the light. So, just the preparation piece, and knowing,
Indeed.
How did it feel? Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that's also part of what really brought me into this is the interest of the information just for myself personally. It's been such a learning experience of understanding the processes that are going on and what are the other mental and emotional and spiritual pieces that are going on throughout this whole process, and really honoring that and honoring this piece of us that as birthing people that we have this ability and that this process is going on. And so being that gap of filling in that gap of lack of knowledge within our society and the story that we've been told about what this process is like.